While in Oxford, I've come to find out about a book which we all take for granted, yet which, in its original form, took 70 years to complete and ran to 10 volumes. Today, we know it as the Oxford English Dictionary. The Oxford English Dictionary was a great feat of Victorian ingenuity and determination, as great as any engineering achievement of that age. And it still remains the ultimate authority on the English language. When it was first published in 1928 by the Oxford University Press, it listed over 400,000 words and included not only their meaning, but their historical root too. To hear the story of this monumental undertaking, I've come to meet the Oxford University Press's head of archive, Martin Moore. So how did the idea of the dictionary come about then, Martin?
Well, the dictionary was the idea of a group of academics in London in the 1850s, and they were called the Philological Society. And to mark Queen Victoria's reign, they decided to make a dictionary that was bigger and better than any made before, such as the great dictionary by Samuel Johnson in the 18th century.
The problem with Samuel Johnson's dictionary was that it only listed 43,000 words, and it was tainted by definitions that reflected his own prejudice. Most famously, he defined oats as a grain given to horses in England, but which in Scotland supports the people. It is perhaps ironic then that the great genius of the Oxford English Dictionary was a Scot, James Murray, who took over as editor in 1879. So how did the project change under the leadership of James Murray?
Well, James Murray was a remarkable man. He was a school teacher from Scotland. Yeah. He never had the money to go to university and get a formal degree, but it's quite clear he had a mind that would put most Oxford professors to shame. Among many other accomplishments, James Murray taught himself about 40 different languages.
Really?
He could speak, read and write them all. And he sees that the dictionary requires far more organisation and resources than the Society had first thought. And it's Murray who puts out an appeal to readers in the English language to come forward and to read texts for the dictionary. We begin to talk about hundreds and hundreds of readers sending in information to Murray and his colleagues.
The readers worked as word detectives, scouring every possible type of printed text, from medieval literature to scientific journals, from song sheets to recipe books, even wills, collecting words and their meanings. They then sent quotations to Murray and his team on half sheets of notepaper, and within a short while, over 1,000 quotation slips a day were arriving in an outbuilding in Murray's back garden. And you had to obviously check every single form that came back there.
Indeed. They have to take every piece of paper, they have to go round libraries in Oxford or beyond.
Double-checking,
double-checking, and then check that everything written out by hand matches the printed version down to the very last full stop. So you can see here at the top left of this slip, there is the word emperorship has been written out. This is what dictionary makers call the head word. You'll see a sentence written out showing how the head word, emperorship, has been used in a certain text. And then you can see a piece of information telling you where that sentence occurs.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it? It really is.
Astonishing.
So all the people that actually wrote in with these little forms were obviously academics themselves, because I guess at that time half the population of the country couldn't read or write anyway.
Literacy wasn't as widespread as it is now, certainly, but not everybody who contributed these slips of paper to the dictionary was a professional academic.
Right, okay.
And one of the largest contributors to the first edition was a man called William Minor. Minor was an American surgeon. He served during the US Civil War and became very disturbed as a result of the experiences he went through there. He came to England to try and recover, but in fact he got worse and murdered somebody. And as a result of that, he was incarcerated for life in Broadmoor Hospital. And of course, Dr. Minor had nothing else to do with his life but to read.
Put pen to paper as
and
well.
Indeed he did this.
Is one of these slips his?
And as we can see here, this is one of the slips that he would send to Murray.
My gosh, look at the tiny writing.
He's one of the great invisible architects of the dictionary, as it were, one of the main people behind the scenes, contributing information to this amazing text.
Minor wasn't the only unusual contributor to the dictionary. Murray had 11 children and they earned pocket money sorting the 3.5 million quotation slips that Murray and his team had to deal with. Even so, it was obvious that the enormous task of cataloguing every word used in the English language would take longer than anyone had thought. How long did it take him?
Well, it even surprised Murray for all his genius. The first little part of the dictionary took 5 years to appear in print, and that went from the letter A to the word ant. So
You're joking.
This is just a
It's still
tiny
stuck on A.
part of the language.
Wow.
Other bits of the language prove to be easier. The dictionary picks up speed as it goes along. But even so, sadly, James Murray did not live to see the end of the first edition of the dictionary. James Murray died in 1915. And by that time, the dictionary had got to the letter T. So he could see the winning post, he just did not live long enough to get to it. And it was left to other editors to carry on the work. And so the first edition of this amazing piece of scholarship is finished in 1928. It does not take 10 years, it takes over 40 years to assemble this single text.
Today, the complete Oxford English Dictionary contains over 500,000 entries, and 100 new words are submitted for inclusion every month. So it looks like the job Murray dedicated his life to will never truly be done.